The state of Virginia is home to a vast expanse of waterways that play a key role in the local environment and community. The ecosystem is dependent on these rivers, streams, bays, and estuaries. Therefore, it should be critical that these bodies of water are sustained and protected. Unfortunately, water pollution is a rampant issue in Virginia, and the problem is only growing. For decades, the waters of Virginia have been a polluter's paradise, with uncontrolled toxic dumping and chemical discharges. As a result, thousands of miles of rivers have been marked as contaminated, and some of Virginia's watersheds have been ranked as the worst in the nation. To get a closer look at the issue, I traveled around the state of Virginia to visit the impacted bodies of water. First, I interviewed environmentalist and water quality specialist Allie Hobgood at the Virginia Aquarium to find out more about the issue.
We need to get these point source dischargers under control and clean up our water.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I would say it's improved a lot.
That is awesome.
Thanks to the Clean Water Act and some of these organizations.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. So how has the Clean Water Act, improved overall the quality of the water in the area?
So what the Clean Water Act basically does is it gives the power to the EPA, and the EPA then turned and said states can monitor their own point source dischargers as long as their regulations are at least as stringent as ours. So in Virginia, the DEQ does it, and we have a program called VIPDs, and the EPA's equivalent is NIPDs, which is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, and ours is the Virginia Discharge Elimination System. And basically what that means is everyone who's discharging into a protected body of water, which is essentially everyone in the state of Virginia, because we're pretty much all in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and the Chesapeake Bay is a protected body of water. You have permits for a number of different contaminants, and you have to stay under the limit for those permits. If you don't, you can be fined, you can be shut down, there's legal repercussions. So it basically forces people to be responsible for the water that they're discharging. Before, you could just dump essentially anything that you wanted into the bay or any of our rivers or streams here. And not just in Virginia, but in the United States as a whole. So water quality was really, really bad. And when that program came around, we started seeing our fisheries return, the oyster population improved, and that was all just some of the things that they monitor for. They monitor nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus. That's important because too much nitrogen and too much phosphorus can cause an algal bloom, and when that happens, when the algae dies and starts decomposing, it can remove a lot of the oxygen from the water, and dead zones cause fish kills. They really reduce biodiversity.
In a recent study conducted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Fish and Wildlife Service, Hampton Roads Sanitation District of Virginia, and the U.S. Geological Survey, it was found that numerous contaminants such as PCBs, PAS, and herbicides and mercury were extremely prevalent in the Chesapeake Bay, resulting in decline in fish population and the destruction of ecosystems. Nearly 12,000 miles of rivers and streams, 96,500 acres of lakes, reservoirs, and 2,200 square miles of estuaries, including much of the Chesapeake Bay, are classified as impaired by at least one pollutant. The effects of these pollutants can be found in the health of the wildlife that inhabits the region. Both old contaminants and emerging contaminants are causes of the problem. Unfortunately, the pollution problem the Chesapeake Bay faces doesn't just stop at major industries. Since 1980, population along the watershed has grown by over 5 million, increasing the number of paved surfaces that feed polluted runoff into the bay from parking lots, highways, commercial, and residential buildings. And so, basically, I guess, what can people do at home to help with water pollution? Rather than just, I guess, places like the DEQ, like what can, I guess, members of the community do individually?
I think there are lots of things that members of the community can do. There's actually a couple of programs in the area. The Elizabeth River Project runs one. I think it's called River Stars, and I could be wrong. But essentially, they encourage people to do things at their house if they live on the water or near the water that will help improve the health of the water. So there are simple things as simple as pick up after your pets, because there's bacteria and ammonia and other sorts of things in their waste products. And if you leave those in your backyard, they eventually leach down into the groundwater, and that can make its way into our river systems. You also can do things like not use fertilizers on your yard. And I know that's a hard one because lots of people really want their yard to look nice, but I mean, that's a huge one. It's huge because eutrophication is a big problem for bodies of water. All over the country. So not using like fertilizers or any other like unnatural chemicals and like weed killers and those sorts of things in your yard, like those are all small things that we can do. Try not to wash your car by a storm drain or dump household waste products down a storm drain. I mean, it sounds crazy to even say something like that, but people do those sorts of things. They don't realize that some of those storm drains do drain directly into some of our streams and retention ponds and all of those sorts of things.
Upon arriving at the James River, it became prevalent that individual pollution plays a huge role in environmental degradation. There was trash everywhere. What would you say would be, I guess, the easiest ways for people to cut back on everyday plastic use?
I guess it depends on how much of an environmental crazy person you want to be, because I get a lot of kind of negative backlash, but you can do a lot of things. Like I've tried to start small, so we tried to eliminate single-use plastics in the lab as much as we possibly could, and it's a lab like this, you know, we have to kind of do things by the book, but we were using plastic bottles for our bacterial samples. We're using glass bottles now, and we autoclave them and reuse them.
Okay, cool.
In my own personal life, I don't use bags at the grocery store anymore. I use shampoo bars, so like I just kind of slowly started trying to like, instead of getting shampoo in bottles, now I get bars.
Okay.
Instead of getting toothpaste in tubes, now I have a tub of toothpaste from Lush, and they reuse all of their tubs. So you can take them back and they reuse them. It's not going into the landfill. I get deodorant in a cardboard tube now because it's biodegradable. I put it in my compost pile. So, you know, you see these people that are like, this is my trash for the whole year in this mason jar. That's not attainable for all of us. But I think like just find the place where it's like easy for you to start cutting out.
The Elizabeth River is a dumping site for many industrial plants, including a coal plant and a sewage treatment plant, making it one of the most polluted rivers in the entire state. Unsafe E. coli levels were found in over 90% of the water quality monitoring stations, as well as increased dead zones where the conditions of the water can no longer sustain most life forms. Over the past 15 years, the rivers have experienced excessive fish die-offs, algal growth, which has depleted oxygen levels in water.
Because too much nitrogen and too much phosphorus can cause an algal bloom, and when that happens, when the algae dies and starts decomposing, it can remove a lot of the oxygen from the water, and dead zones cause fish kills. They really reduce biodiversity. They also monitor for suspended solids. And one of the things that suspended solids do is they block light from penetrating through the water column, and they can kill submerged aquatic vegetation, which is hugely important for dissolved oxygen. It's an important nursery for a lot of fish and crabs. So it's a really important habitat, and we don't want to lose that habitat. And they also monitor for organic material. So that does the same kind of thing. Bacteria will eat the organics. They'll go crazy eating it. While they're eating, they're also breathing, just living their lives like we do. And as they do that, they deplete the oxygen. Yeah. So same kind of thing. It can cause dead zones, fish kills. So those aren't the only things that they monitor, but those are some of the things they monitor. And monitoring those things helps us make sure that we're keeping our water bodies as healthy as they can be, and kind of turning the tide on the health of those that were compromised.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole big program with lots of different pieces and parts.
That's
but
awesome.
It's kind of a super simplified explanation of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so, what I guess aquatic or marine life would you say is most impacted by these algal blooms and dead zones?
I think the things that are most impacted are the things that cannot leave.
Okay.
So a lot of the plant life, obviously, especially submerged aquatic vegetation, it's stuck there. It can't leave if there isn't enough sunlight, or if the pH is too high, or the salinity has become too low, or anything. I mean, just any random thing that might happen. So the problem with that is once it's kind of like a bottom-up effect.
Yeah.
Once those ecosystems start dying off, it affects everything else.
Coal ash contains known carcinogenic and neurotoxic chemicals such as arsenic, cadmium, hexavalent chromium, lead, mercury, and selenium. Coal ash pollution itself is detrimental to the well-being of Virginia's wildlife. 2 of the dumping sites are actually recognized on the federal Superfund list, and 1 has even reached a national priority level. At least 6 of the other sites have been reported to contain extensive ecosystem damage, including the contamination of groundwater. Although tackling the issue head-on by adjusting regulations would definitely be the more effective solution, it's not possible until the members of the community do their part. This means taking action locally within the sphere of the state. From simply cutting back on plastic to joining a community organization, we can make a difference.
Troubles are gone. We hold it all inside us and light hands. We'll never let it go. I think you understand. We'll drive around all the mystery towns. I can see it now. It's all in my head. Staring down at the gravity ground. When you're this high up, you never wanna come down. When I was lost in your eyes, was I trying to find a way beyond all the palm tree power lines? I do what I can, dreaming dreams of material things. I try to wake you up. I do what I can. Let me take you to some places I've seen. They're down in Tulane.